Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Radelaide Summit Podcast in collab with the Backside Potty for TDU 2025. We are here, Kashi,
Ciao.
Wang,
hello,
and myself, Alex. We are the Radelaide Summit Podcast. We are based here in Adelaide and joined by our Brisbane counterparts, the Backside Potty. We have Shreds.
Hey.
Shauno.
G'day.
And Freebie.
Hello. Hey, what a fan club with me.
What a fan club, mate. That's his mum and dad.
It's great to be here. It's so wonderful to be back in Adelaide. Some of the guys from Brisbane, so many people in the crowd that have come all the way down from Brisbane. It's just wonderful to see everyone. It's been a really exciting tour. We've loved watching it. We've loved riding along in it. And it's been awesome to have this collaboration that we're doing between the two podcasts. And just want to thank, we've got the legend Phil Liggett here. Everyone's come more to see him than see us. But Phil, it's great to have you here, Phil. And thank you for giving up your time. You're a very busy man, and we really appreciate the time that you've given to our show. So thank you very much. How's it all been so far? How are you finding the tour? What's your view so far?
I've really enjoyed it, to be quite honest. I've just... everybody thought I'd retired, so they were quite surprised when I turned up, because somebody in Melbourne ran a story that said I've retired from commentating, misinterpreted what I actually said at the Olympic Games, which was I'd retired from the next Olympic Games. Because I've done 17, I thought that's enough to bore the world. There won't be an 18th in LA, although maybe I'll change my mind.
And how you found the tour down under so far? That's been some exciting races. It's good to see the Wombats, Sam Welsford, doing well.
Yeah, I'll tell you, it's been very pleasing. I'm working with Anna Mears, who is simply lovely and a great champion. I commentated on her through almost all of her medals, and of course Robin McHugh. We've been together for a long time, and we blended well on the television, so it's been really very enjoyable. Watching the racing's been good, exciting, it's close. So we're looking for a good finish tomorrow, and I won't have to get up so early to get out to the finishing line. So that's probably what I'm looking forward to best of all, yeah.
What is your favourite TDU moment, not just of this tour, but all over? What do you reckon?
You know, it goes back a long way, because I've done all of them. I mean, I came here in 1998 to check the routes out with the organisation. Then I came back in 99 to commentate on the first one. And I remember Stuart O'Grady, we were in Rundle Mall. That's where we had the team's presentation in 99. He couldn't cope with the size of the race now. And Stuart was a rider, of course, as you know. Eventually he won that race. And he was standing with me, couldn't believe it was coming together. All of these top bike riders in the world walking around Rundle Mall, and the one thing that struck him, he said, look at that, Eric Zabel coming out of a superstore with a bag of toys for his newly born son, Rick. and Stewie just said, I just don't believe it's here, it's in South Australia. Well, of course, Rick became a Tour de France rider. Wasn't quite as good as his dad, but he had a good career as well. And so, yeah, I remember that. It stands out like it was only last week, to be honest. Yeah, there's so many stories I've had. But, all the people I've met and all the people who seem to keep wild animals who've been injured, I've had the pleasure of looking after the wombats, looking after the koalas, looking after the joeys of the parents that were killed on the roos. Yeah, I met a lot of nice friends too. Yeah.
Good. So it's safe to say Australia is your favourite place in the Southern Hemisphere?
Isn't it the only place in America? I'm not sure about that. No, I love Australia. I first came to Australia in 1988. I was thrown off the aeroplane because I didn't have a visa. I said, what do you mean? It's a Commonwealth country. They said, no, I'm afraid you're going to need a visa. Well, Qantas at the time were very nice. And they said, look, get your visa and come back tomorrow. We'll put you straight back on the aircraft. And that's what happened. But then once I landed, to me, it was just a wonder world. But I spent most of my time in Brisbane and in New South Wales, because the race was being developed in New South Wales. Commonwealth Bank Cycling Classic. And then, South Australia came on the agenda when Mike Turter said, we're going to organise a race like the Tour Down Under. And I have to say, since I found South Australia and Adelaide, I've come to love it very, very much. And I'm too old now to change homes, but if I were to live anywhere, it would be in Adelaide. It's a great thing. Yeah.
Nice way.
I really like it.
Why is that, Phil? Because the wines, or what's...
Oh, I don't drink anymore. Mind you, I don't drink any less either. So, yes, for the wines, I know every vineyard in South Australia, I think. And I've been a guest of Seppelsfield because the sponsor with the wine in the Tour Down Under. And they sent a request when I arrived, would I go to the winery, which I did with Trish, my wife, and we sampled a 100-year-old Tawny Port.
Isn't it delicious?
It was unbelievable. Mind you, get short change for your money. I didn't pay, but because when it's 100 years old and it's put in the barrel, say for example, I tasted the 1925 barrel, which was opened especially for me. And if you have a little tot that big, it'll set you back about $1,700. Fortunately, I didn't have to do that. But you know, the barrel, when it's locked off 100 years earlier, remember everybody who made it, all gone now, of course, and they'll never know that they made a great barrel of Tawny Port. But the 2/3 of the wine, the port, in that barrel evaporates over 100 years. But the third that's left, it'll blow your head off when you put that. It's
like golden syrup.
Delicious. No, it's beautiful.
I think Wang's had the same one. He's about the same age.
The same age.
Yeah, absolutely. You're a bit of a connoisseur, aren't you, Wang?
You don't look 100. You're fine.
I feel it, Phil. Good.
Yeah.
Now, if you could bring back one legendary rider from the past to race today, who would it be and why?
Eddie Merckx. No doubt about it.
The GOAT.
Didn't even skip
He was
a
the man that stopped me being a professional because he was too good and I didn't see much point in turning pro.
Yeah.
I had a contract too. And spin forward a lot of years later, Eddie was the most brilliant bike rider. At the time, I didn't particularly like him because I couldn't beat him. But as life grew apart and I went to be a journalist, I became professionally involved with Eddie and we became very good friends. And so I've done a lot of interviews with Eddie around the world. In fact, I had this discussion only with my wife last night, saying that the best interview I ever had with Eddie, which sticks in my mind, was when we did a Legends Night here in Adelaide. And Eddie's always worried. He doesn't speak great English, he tells me. He says, Phil, is it possible we speak in French? I said, it takes too long to interpret, Eddie. What's wrong with you? He says, he's very restless and he's always worried and always has a problem. Anyway, when we finished, he got a standing ovation. He's difficult to break down. When you get him going, he's fantastic. And I went to him after the interview and I said, Eddie, you were so good tonight. Everybody loved you. And he said, no, Phil. You were good. I strutted back to the table. But what he meant to say was I'd got the best out of him, and that's why I like him. But before that, I'd done that here. I went to his home in Brussels, where he still has his world hour record bike in his office, standing against the wall. And we got talking on camera, and I said, you know, Eddie, you're the reason I never turned professional. And he goes, what? I said, because I couldn't beat you. And his eyes went to his feet, slowly came up my body, looked at my face, and he said, you beat me. I said, that's why I didn't turn professional. Absolutely true. Eddie is a spectacular person. Yeah, just a couple of years younger than me now, but outside his house, he has an 80-kilometre cycling track called Eddie Merckstraat. The riders go past the door of his house. I could talk about Eddie for probably an hour.
Right.
We were definitely wondering why you chose journalism over a professional career.
Exactly, and I was very lucky. Yeah, it was very nice to meet Eddie, and we're good friends now. He's a miserable sod, because every time you speak to him, he's always got a problem. I doubt it. Nah, Eddie's always got a problem. And so in the end, I was dealing through his son, Axel. Fancy calling your son Axel when you've been a world champion on a bike. But Axel went to live in Canada. And I remember saying to Eddie, he goes, oh, he says, Axel's married a girl from Canada. I said, she's probably good looking, Eddie. Yes. And I said, well, Eddie, there's no good looking girls in Belgium. And then I remembered, because I lived in Belgium, I remembered his wife is the most spectacular look. I said, apart from your wife. So I got away with it, I think. I didn't mention the war.
Get in there, Shawnee.
Now, you've covered a lot of races. And they're logistical nightmares, right?
They can be.
Have you ever gotten lost whilst covering a race?
Lost while covering the race? You mean in the car or on television?
Anywhere. Like
I get
car, get to the stage.
On the way here.
Well, you know, I got lost here. I was with Paul Sherwin when he joined me on the commentary team here. You know, sadly Paul passed away in 2018, but he loved coming here. He was the pie king. Without him, I couldn't find a good pie shop. we used to get in the car and then we would drive our own car to the race stop. And I said to Paul, it's that way. It's north. And it wasn't, it was bloody south. And so we shot off to north, and Paul said, are you sure this is north? Because the sun's coming up in the wrong direction. He's a man of Africa, he works on the sun. Yeah, I said, yeah, it is. And I went, sir, I said, bloody hell, no, it isn't. Go back. We got to the start line as the riders were about to be sent on the way.
Oh, no.
I remember that the police escort gave me a big round of applause when we turned up, and there was no time to get out of the car. We threw our guests in the car and left seconds ahead of the race starting, so we were really lost that day. I can still get very confused about the directions in Adelaide. As long as they say which side the ocean's on, left or right, I can work it out. Yeah, we've been lost a few times, but we've never been in a situation where we've missed... Oh, I've missed the commentary, but that was due to the Tour de France for women, when they used to run it in the 80s an hour or so ahead of the men. Yeah. And the police wouldn't let us go past the peloton of the women. So I couldn't get to the commentary. And so I was working with English TV. The English TV had to contact a commentator. He drove I'm sure he broke the speed limit, 200 miles to get to the position and do the feed, which he did. And thankfully, he saved my life.
And your job.
And my job, probably, yes. Yeah. I think he took my job later on. Yeah. I've had plenty of times. I just... in those days, when we used to... Early days of covering the Tour de France, we'd start with the race. And then it's like a Le Mans type start. We'd run for the car when you hear the whistle blow, because you had to leave before the riders, otherwise you were banished to the back and you were finished. And then you had to drive. And we used to drive pretty quick for 2.5 hours. And then we would get the time in hand to beat the riders to the finish. And then we would be commentating in those days only an hour and a half live on TV. Of course, nowadays we work a day ahead because we can't do it anymore. The tour's too big. So we don't even speak to a rider on the tour anymore. I remember Robin McEwen, when I saw him at the end of the time trial on a Saturday, at the end of the tour, 3 weeks, first time I'd seen a rider in the race, because we're never on the same track. And Robbie shouted, "Oh, Phil, have you been on all of the tour?" I said, "You cheeky sod, yes." Yeah.
If you could have a race, design your own race anywhere, where would it be?
Wow. Well, of course, I was the organiser of the Tour of Britain for 22 years, so I did learn Great Britain. That was a big race. It was a 12-day race. We got the top riders designing a race, and it was, in fact, the job that Stewie does. You know, you lay your route down, you get the clearance from the police, you invite the teams you want. It's very stressful. The 2 weeks flies by. But I think on the I wouldn't mind organising one in South Africa, but it might be a little bit of a nightmare. They used to have some good races in Africa. The Rapport Tour, which was a regional newspaper, used to do the race. We had lots of fun, but we had different problems, like a giraffe or something ambling out the bush. And of course, the South Africans still learn the game. Sometimes the race director at front, we passed him on the roadside waving. What? He goes, I've run out of petrol.
Oh, no.
So we left the race director and took the race ourselves to a place called the Wilderness, down the garden route. There's a million experiences that we've had. I remember the police on the Bank Tour, the Commonwealth Bank Classic, they surrounded an echidna in the highway to save its life, and we had to get the peloton around the police cars with the echidna stuck in the middle, which they did, thankfully. It's
That's
terrific.
awesome. And Phil, obviously you spent a lot of time in Africa. Which races do you like to commentate or try and develop over in Africa? What would you try and do? Like a stage race, one-day races? What sort of things would you try and...
Well, there are sadly not so many races these days in Africa, but the African cyclists are getting better by coming here. And I mean all of south of the equator Africa. And you've got riders like Binim Gramai, who got 3 stage wins in the Tour. That kid is a superhero in his home country now, Eritrea. And the town were celebrating every night. The town must have been more knackered than Binim after 3 weeks of jumping around till after midnight and watching it on every television set they could find. He did so much for the country, not just for the sport of cycling, of course. I went to Africa in 1989, I think, on a phone call from African TV saying that they had the biggest cycle race in the world. I said, you do? I'd never been to Africa at that time. And they said, yeah, it's called the Cape Argus Pick and Pay Cycle Tour. We have 12,500 riders. And it's a race. It is timed. And it was. Everybody was timed. They used to start the pros in the group at the front, and they were always going to win. But everybody else compared their times, and they were published, and you were given a position. So that legitimately they had the biggest cycle race in the world. I think the Irish thought I was supposed to know every name of 12,500 riders. That didn't quite work out. But we gave it a lot of time on TV and put it on the map. At first it wasn't live coverage. I did reports every night. But as it gathered momentum, it's got a total of nearly 40,000 riders. And was a great field. Lance Armstrong took part. Yeah. He finished third, trying to help Daryl Impey to get the win. And Daryl did. And Daryl's here now. He's also migrated to Australia. And we saw him last night at the Legends dinner. And he is a legend. He's won this tour twice.
Twice.
Do you know him? And he's a lovely man. Don't race against him. Believe me, he's very fit. And so cycling is developed all over the world. And I've been so lucky to be asked to cover and commentate. I've had quite a few challenges. But I mean, as far as the Argus Pick and Pay Cycle Tour is now simply called the Cape Town Cycle Tour. But they broke through huge barriers. It's a race which started in 1978 by a bunch of cyclists who protested about the way cars didn't appreciate cyclists on the highway. And so as a result of that, they went round the Cape Peninsula. And I've seen many places in my life, but that's one of the most beautiful places in the world, is Cape Town. I went round the peninsula. We went over these lovely climbs called Smitswinkel, where you were likely to be bombed by baboons. And then you got round the point at the end and came round Camel Rock and back up to the finish in Cape Town. It was magnificent. But they closed the roads. Cape Town shut the city down from 5 o'clock in the morning till about 5 in the evening, and they still do to this day. And what it's done for Cape Town is unbelievable. It was the biggest event in Cape Town officially, because it raised something like 800 million rand for the city, and it pushed the cricket, which is huge in South Africa, into third place, and first place was the famous jazz festival. And so cycling went from strength to strength at that time.
It gets pretty windy out there too, doesn't it? In Cape Town, it gets pretty windy.
It's very windy. If the doctor blows, the black doctor, the southeaster, we're in trouble.
On that race, I've seen a footage of a semi-trailer being blown over sideways. They had to stop the race.
We had our camera guy blown off, and that was the end. Yeah. I can't tell riders' names upside down, so they did have to stop the race. Yeah, my wife was riding, and she could hardly walk to pick a bike, or never mind start the race out the chutes. They start you in chutes of up to 1,000 riders every 5 minutes on opposite sides of a dual carriageway in the centre of Cape Town. And just down the road, they weren't going anywhere. The wind was ridiculous, so they had to call it off, yeah. There was always the nutters who were determined to reach the finish, but there was nobody there when they got there. Yeah.
Now, on a different subject, you've been...
What, subject other than cycling?
Well, in cycling, of course, but over the years you've probably seen nutrition go, from A to Z. Yeah. What is the most unusual food you've seen a cyclist eat?
I remember Lance Armstrong telling me he used to have cornflakes with water and no sugar. I thought that sounds absolutely fantastic.
Sounds terrible.
And the best of luck. You actually should be talking to my wife. She loves her nutrition. She was a masseuse, etc. I know bugger all. I like seafood, and I eat it.
Is that your favourite? Yep.
No, seafood, any food, I'll eat it.
Oh, same. Love it.
No.
That sounds like my diet.
They carry these gummy things in the back pocket. Nothing tastes nicer in your mouth when your mouth is dried up in the hot weather. Yeah. As long as you keep eating. I don't understand nutrition.
I did see Luke Platt eating something today. Was that sugar cubes or was it ice cubes?
You saw that?
Yeah.
Where'd you see that?
I heard you talking about it on the screen.
Well, yes, it's true. But I had a bag of snakes by me, see. After time when I ate them, though, so I'm not talking. Because at least I'm not in vision when I'm commentating. And I've also got to keep the bag away from Robbie. Robbie's on my left, so the bags are well away on the right.
Away from
And Anna Mee is even further away because she do the same. I mean, Anna's got countless Olympic medals. Countless, eh? She's got 36 medals, I think. Yeah. 18 of which are gold, World and Olympics.
Yeah.
And she was trying to steal my gummies.
So just back onto the commentary.
Yeah.
Strangest thing you've ever had to commentate on?
It was probably there's many of them because people think that it's a long time to talk if you're talking for 6 hours.
Yes.
And you've got the same 4 riders on the camera. And I always said to Paul Sherwin, look, Paul, the cyclists will enjoy whatever is there. They'll even turn the sound off. But if you're going to make cycling popular, and then you want to stop the old lady going for a cup of tea until the advert break. So that if you succeed in doing that, she's taking an interest. And I've had many husbands say, can't believe this, but you got my wife interested in the Tour de France now, because it's not all about the cyclists.
Yeah.
What do they want to know about the fact he's riding 54.36? Nothing. And the cyclists, well, they'll understand it. So with Paul and I, we used to tell stories.
Yeah.
Paul is very up with his animals of Africa. Yeah. I'm very up with my birds of the world. And between the two of us, we used to tell stories. And the stories... I mean, my wife said on English TV, just after I just left, David Miller said, "That's a big bird." And that was the end of the commentary until the helicopter flew somewhere else. Well, that big bird was a vulture. And it was bred in the Alps and released about 5 or 6 years ago. And it's now a huge success story. So we told the story of the success of the vultures which now fly in the Alps and in the Pyrenees, different breeds. And I said something about one. A bird flew through the camera. I said, "Paul, did you see that? It was an osprey." An osprey is quite a rare bird.
Yep.
And he says, "Yeah, it was," he said. Well, I turned my Twitter on. Did Filliger just say that was an osprey? Yeah, I did. And we tell the stories. The stories of the chateau. I started this as a joke on television. And I thought I'll just drop Paul in this one because the helicopter went past this chateau, and in those days They just took a picture of a nice chateau. And I had no roof on it. I said, Paul, this chateau, it needs a bit of renovation. Paul goes, yeah, Phil, yeah. He said, Louis XIV lived there for a while, and then I was looking at him. I couldn't say to him because he was alive. I was very impressed. I said, well, Paul, I am impressed. But what started, it snowballed. It snowballed. The organisation realised at last they have a beautiful country, and people are watching it not just for the riders, but for the beauty, because they know they choose the nicest roads. And when the tour's over, they plan a route in France because they know they'll find some of the best places. And that is, it's now all of the races around the world, even this one, it tells you about the area as much as the riders. Very important. If you're going to cause all the inconvenience to the world of road users, you don't want them to complain too hard, and so they take an interest too.
I think the most annoying thing is when they do an ad break with 10 Ks to go, and there's like, we're literally climbing up Wollonga Hill, and there's a throw to a Tourism to South Australia ad.
I'll tell you, I mean, that's where the money is. Television's all about making money. I can't watch American television except when I'm commentating on it, because we're off to an ad break, and if you get a producer who's got 15 breaks he's got to take during the race period, and he's still got 3 to get out, and he's only got 5 kilometres to go. Yeah. It's hopeless. He'll go and press the button just as the guy jumps on the guy, and I'll look at Paul. I'll say, that's a winning move. You've got to come back. Got to get the ad breaks in, mate. Yeah. Now, it's frustrating as hell, and would kill me. It would.
Speaking of dropping each other in it, you and Paul, what's the funniest mispronunciation of a rider's name that's come up?
We had a long time mispronouncing Jamaluddin Abdul-Japarov. It took a while, and finally, and Peter Sagan, funny enough, doesn't sound a bad name, but we asked Peter how to say it. He goes, Sagan. Sagan. Well, I'm not sure. And so if he can't tell us his name, we're in trouble. But we've had... sometimes we get producers who are besotted by get his name right. I said, well, I can get it right, but you're American. You can't say it right. Because they say Milan. I say, it's not Milan. It's Milan or Milano. Oh, they won't have it. No, it's Milan, and off they go. We have annual arguments on how to pronounce people's names and the countries. You see, Lidl Trek, as we call it, but in Great Britain it's Lidl Trek. But the team don't want it pronounced Lidl Trek because they think the viewers will hear Little Trek. And they don't want to be called Little Trek, I understand them. So we're all Lidl Trek. An agreement was reached a few years ago now. Yeah.
If you could commentate any race, if you could go back and watch it again knowing what the outcome's going to be, which one would it be?
That's a hell of to use. I don't know. I know when we do a good commentary, we go off the set and I say, Paul, everything we wanted to get out to the viewer today, we did. And feel happy yourself, because when Greg LeMond won the Tour de France by 8 seconds, back in 1989, we thought, of course, Fignon was going to win. So we went outside the Palace of Versailles, because that's where the final time trial started. Fignon was leading the race by 50 seconds. Of course he's going to win. And so Paul and I pre-recorded the opening for London. The camera guy put his film cassette in and shouted go, and so I introduced the race. I said, Paul, who's going to win the race? He goes, well, Phil, he says, it's Laurent Fignon leads by 50 seconds, he's in yellow, he's last man to start, he's a great time trialist, he's going to win the Tour. So I looked back at the camera and said, well, I think Greg LeMond will win. I think he'll win by 6 seconds. And then we stopped the recording, because then it was going to be butted on in London to the front of the live show. Well, after the show was over, we got complaints I'd given the race away. It was recorded. I know the answer. And so what we did was we were driving off from Versailles to Paris, and Paul goes, "What do you say that for?" I said, "Of course Fignon's going to win, but I don't want the viewers to turn off, so let's give it a little bit of an edge." Right, okay, accepted that. But when we started commentating on the race, Paul, who had not been a commentator long, 3 years maybe, because I know afterwards I advised him to stick with that commentary and never do better, now get off, resign. Wasn't the case, of course. We worked together for 33 years. But Paul said, when we started commentating, Paul was working this out. He did study maths in university. He was working the kilometrage gain, every kilometre, and saying it. And he was right. Le Mans was knocking it off, a few seconds at a time. And when Fignon was coming off the top of the Champs-Élysées, Paul was, Greg LeMond, just crossed the line. So we now had a marker. Greg LeMond had delivered his time. Now all we had to do is to see what Fignon did. And as Fignon came rocking, rolling down the Champs-Élysées, and Greg was standing right here by me with his wife Kathy, and I said, the time Fignon needed to do ended about 220 metres before the line, and we counted. 8 seconds went by, and I said, I don't believe it. Greg LeMond has just won the Tour de France by 8 seconds, and I predicted 6. The executive producer in London put the key over in my ear and just simply said, next time, Liggett, get it bloody right. To when I almost cracked. Well, I did crack. I started to cry. And we had LeMond and Kathy screaming and leaping for joy in tears. Fignon had come crashing into the crowd and felt like a curled-up fetus on the floor. He was crying. And me crying because of what the producer had just said. It was quite silly, but it was a great occasion, yeah. And the other occasion I think about was when Cadel Evans won the Tour de France. Because in 1998, I think it was, I'd said to Cadel in the Tour of Tasmania, Cadel, stop riding mountain bikes. You've got all the ability to ride and win a Tour de France. Yeah, but, you know, I've got a great sponsor, which was Volvo, and I want to do the 2000 Olympics and get a gold medal. But, of course, as always happens when you dedicate, broke his collarbone, gets the 2000 Olympics, and couldn't even make the top 6. However, spin forward to his great days in 2011. Well, I can remember. 2011, he won, right?
Maybe.
Right, well, we'll stick with that one.
That sounds good.
Good. I'm delighted. I get mixed up with his victory as a world champion, which was 10. Which, I don't bloody remember now. Anyway, I'm addled. So, anyway, SBS were getting the biggest viewers figures they'd ever recorded for anything on their television network. And people were staying up all night. Showdown came, and the time trial came, and it was a brilliant battle. And then Cadel won, got the lead, was sewing it all up. On the Champs-Élysées, should be a formality. He comes in, and he wins the Tour de France. SBS were beside themselves. Now, yes, you were hearing my voice, but they weren't paying me because I was tied to my other contracts. And so I had to get rid of all the other contracts with my English TV and American TV, because the producer for SBS, who would never speak to me because he wasn't allowed to, he just said, Phil, please, can you get an interview with Cadel? Because they were recording the biggest ever viewing figure. Well, they probably didn't know it then, but... So I looked out on a commentary position, I thought, Christ. So I said, yeah, I'll try. So I jumped out the box, crashed through to the barrier, had to get over the barrier, and I managed to reach Cadel's shoulder. He was being mobbed with millions of people. And I spun him around and said, Cadel, it's Phil. And he goes, you? I said, yeah, it's me. He said, you told me I could win the Tour de France. I said, yeah, but I didn't expect to wait bloody 13 years. And then we did the interview. He was, and of course, this year, or last year now in Paris, I got to be with Cadel and do the road event. And I saw the other side of Cadell. He's a really, really nice guy. He's always very reserved. But I really enjoyed doing the Olympics with him in Paris. And the first thing that Channel 9 got me to do when I landed was, Phil, there's a camera crew waiting for you underneath the Arc de Triomphe. Get up there in a car quick, because we're sending you to interview Cadell. And so I said, Cadell, all those years on, mate, and here we are standing in the place where you won the tour. And he became very animated and very good. Now, I've really enjoyed it. And he's here. He may have gone back today, but he was with us last night in the Legends tour. Yeah. There you go. Good.
We should probably wrap there based on the time, unfortunately.
There's time. We can't have been here that long.
We have.
Oh, my God, we have.
I know. Time flies when you're having fun.
First time I've done a podcast on radio with such an audience.
Are you going to do a few more now, Phil? Podcasts? You're going to get back on the podcast scene and do a few more podcasts?
Well, I enjoy doing them because you have a chance to say things that, well, not controversial things, but things that you've done and enjoyed.
And apart from the people here, we can do some editing later too, so, it makes it easy to scrub things out if you say the wrong thing.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, nothing I've said, it's all true, so I don't worry about it.
Thank you, everyone, for coming out as well, and a huge thanks to everyone that's participated in the Cervelo Challenge. That closes in 15-20 minutes. Huge thanks to Cervelo also for backing us. And, of course, to Phil Liggett for joining us today.
Thank you very much. And it's lovely to see you all. Thank you all.
Phil, we thought we'd get you a little surprise. Now, it's not a 100-year-old bottle of Seppeltsfield Para, unfortunately, but it's a nice bottle I read from the Barossa, mate, and thanks very much for making the effort. You probably don't pay much for this while you're here in Adelaide this week, but please take that home and enjoy it on us.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Phil Liggett, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks a lot. That's very kind of you. Thank you.